Good afternoon. Some of y'all have not been in my sessions yet. Okay. Thank you, Linda. There's some military folks in here. They understand the preparatory command. But for those that don't, when somebody gives you a preparatory command, you're supposed to respond with something. The preparatory command in this case is good afternoon. Yeah. Okay. Better, but we're going to get it exactly right this time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, great. My name is Mike Black. I'm the Vice President of Defense at AFCEA International. I'm excited to welcome you today to this panel. This is a first in a series of IDEA panels, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. We've got senior cyber leaders on this panel this year. Our next two panels will be held in TechNet Augusta in Georgia and TechNet Indo-Pacific in Hawaii in August and November, respectively. So we hope to see you at those panels as well. All the AFCEA IDEA panels and receptions are made possible by sponsors, sponsorship of Ciena Corporation and their partners. This panel is jointly sponsored by Ciena and Increditech. We're very appreciative of their support of AFCEA IDEA and grateful for their sponsorship. Is there anybody from Increditech here, in here today? Okay, we can give them applause in their absence. Thank you. Thank you, Ciena. Also, the panels will be followed by a Meet the Panelists reception. Today, we're happy to invite you to this reception, which will take place at 5 p.m. In the Sharp Street lobby and terrace on the third floor of the convention center. This panel has been approved for several continuing education credits. However, you do have to stay the full hour to receive that credit, so be sure to get your badge scanned before you exit the theater. We cannot scan the badges once you have left the theater. Now I'd like to introduce Ms. Carrie Poulos, a technical consultant of government sales at Ciena Government Systems, who will introduce our moderator of our panel. Carrie is a technical consultant at CGSI, supporting DISA for the last 13 years. And she's passionate about supporting federal government and to help the government meet their mission and critical objectives. So please join me in welcoming Carrie.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm honored to be here today along with Increditech to support this panel on moving towards zero trust and cybersecurity principles. As you heard with General Skinner's message yesterday in his keynote, we can't talk about cybersecurity without zero trust. So I'm very excited to hear what the panel has to say about that today and the challenges that they've encountered. It's also my pleasure to introduce the moderator, Dr. Sabari Gupta. Dr. Gupta is the founder and chief executive officer of Electrosoft, a provider of technology-based services and solutions for federal, civilian, and defense customers since 2001. Dr. Gupta has been active in information security industry for over 20 years and is widely recognized expert in digital identity and access management, cybersecurity, risk management, and cloud security. She holds a PhD, master's, and a Bachelor of Technology in Electrical Engineering and CISSP and CISA certifications. Dr. Gupta is a member of the AFCEA International Cyber Committee and is a frequent speaker at industry conferences on cybersecurity, specifically on the topic of zero trust. She has authored over 40 technical papers on leading-edge topics, holds 4 patents in cryptology, and is a named co-author of several NIST special publications. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for your time today and your considerable talent on this panel. We look forward to a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Pull this a little closer. You can hear me, right? Okay. Very good. So good afternoon. And I wanted to say this has been such a great conference so far. I know I've learned a ton of things. Just wanted to get by a show of hands. If you think you've learned 3 new meaningful things at this conference so far, maybe a show of hands? How about 5? more than 5, I guess. Yeah. So no, it's been really educational. The excellent sort of the booths as well as the different theaters and the presentations. So this is the IDEA senior cyber leaders panel, of course. And just like, let's see, we've heard of Zero Trust in almost every single session thus far at this conference. So here we are going to be talking some more about Zero Trust. So let's see. So before I get started, I did want to kind of talk a little bit about the origins of Zero Trust. I mean, it's been around, the phrase or the concept has been around for quite a few years. And initially it was kind of a way to get away from the traditional sort of the perimeter-based security approaches, But over the last few years, federal government has really embraced Zero Trust and put a lot more granularity and, different capabilities under it. So there's a lot more detail in what we call Zero Trust these days. So I just want to run through a couple of the sort of the publications or the mandates that have come about over the last couple of years. So first of all, I want to talk about NIST Special Pub 800-207 on Zero Trust architecture. That came out in August of 2020. And then shortly thereafter, NSA put out a paper in February of 21 on embracing Zero Trust security model. I'm sure many of you have seen that as well. Then the third important thing, obviously very important, the Executive Order 14028, which was released in May of 2021, which really mandated government agencies to plan for and implement Zero Trust architecture. And then, of course, OMB Memorandum M-22-09 was released in January 22 last year, and then that put forward further details of what Zero Trust means and required agencies to achieve specific goals, Zero Trust goals, by the end of fiscal year 2024. Then CISA, of course, has been doing a lot of work in the area of Zero Trust, and they had put out a Zero Trust maturity model in June of 2021. Some of you may have seen it before, but they also released an updated version in April, just last month. And in CISA's version of the maturity model, or CISA's maturity model rather, there are 5 pillars and 3 cross-cutting initiatives, whereas the DoD Zero Trust reference architecture released July of last year, and the strategy released in October of last year, it talks about 7 pillars, but there's a lot of overlap, and it kind of means all the same thing. But 7 pillars, 4 goals, and I think there are 91 capabilities. So we've been talking a lot about Zero Trust in general at this conference. So today in this panel, we wanted to talk about the importance and the impact of Zero Trust initiatives, on the through some of these senior cyber leaders. Executive feedback on the recent Zero Trust reference architecture and the strategy. And also, since this is an IDEA panel, so we will talk a little bit about the impact of Zero Trust in the area of diversity, I guess all of the IDEA principles, let me see what they are, but inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. Okay, so with that, I wanted to introduce our distinguished panel here. I'll introduce them each by their role, their name and their role, but I'd like to ask each of you guys to talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and your experiences in reference to Zero Trust.
Yeah, Bruce Crawford, spent about 34 years in the military, retired in 2020, spent about 24 months in industry, and had some pretty diverse opportunities to not only work within the fabric of commercial America, and really gain an understanding that you don't get inside of the DoD machine, but also an opportunity to sit on both public and private boards and get an understanding for how they feel about Zero Trust. How do they really feel about cybersecurity and strategic importance? Just seeing that start to come to fruition inside boards. So a couple of things. Just food for thought. I think the Zero Trust discussion is bigger than the Zero Trust discussion, to be quite honest with you. I think what we're really talking about is a competitive advantage for the nation. I think you heard General Nakasone talk about that a little bit. There's some great testimony, congressional testimony over the last couple of months to talk about this. But really, I mean, I believe that our ability to implement zero trust and transition away from traditional ways of defending networks is really about our ability to win in the information age, which is going to be critically important. And I don't know anybody that'll disagree with that. The other point that was made is, look, there have been principles of zero trust around now since, I think, 2009, when the concept was first developed. So this is not new. What I will tell you, though, is what I believe is new is the collaborative approach that you see across the department that DOD is taking, and to be quite honest with you, across the country. The last thing that I'll tell you is having spent time both in the government, inside, and in industry, when I think about zero trust, and just given the collaboration that's going to have to occur, the information sharing, no pun intended, here across the department with both public and private sector, when I think about zero trust, I think about it in terms of we're stronger together. And so look forward to a good discussion today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me again. This is always a great event. So I'm Ken McNeil, CIO, J6 Director for the National Guard. My responsibility is to support over 400,000 soldiers and airmen across 54 states, territories, and the District of Columbia. So when we think of zero trust, obviously, in our homeland mission, it means a little different spin to it than our Title X partners. So I'll talk a little bit about it later, but I'll hit about it up front. We're in that unique mission space that when we're doing supporting a homeland mission, we actually communicate and have information sharing at a lowest level of a community all the way up to non-DOD partners. So that brings the unique task of making sure that we really educate and implement as close as possible the zero trust philosophy, because really verification and at that level is key. Not saying that within DOD is a lot easier, but just from that, our homeland mission and our non-government partners, it brings a unique challenge. So, from our touch point, I think appropriate timing in light of some of our challenges that we have right now today that's in front of us, and some of the 54 states and territories. So implementing this capability, it will definitely shore up the National Guard from not only a Title X perspective, but definitely from our homeland mission and supporting the nation.
Thank you. Hannah?
So I'm Hannah Becker. I'm a partner at Becker Digital. We're a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. And I teach cyber warfare at Norwich University and serve on AFCEA's cyber committee, where I've been researching digital transformation, mis and disinformation, and social media's evolving role in cyber threats. So zero trust has been a theme throughout all of those kind of research projects this year. Technology was not my original career path. My undergrad is actually in agriculture, and with a focus in beef production, but I married an Army officer, and so I wasn't able to move 100 head of cattle from Army base to Army base, and so I had to pick another career. Technology always piqued my interest because when I was a child and it was coming out, it was supposed to make all our lives amazing. Every part of our life was supposed to be so much better. I fully expected to live like the Jetsons by 2020. Was very disappointed, still waiting on the space car. But what technology brought, while it did bring us so many benefits, it also brought us a lot of threats, a lot of challenges that most of us couldn't have even conceptualized 10, 20 years ago. And zero trust is kind of the best shot we have at addressing this Pandora's box of cyber threats. So I've been really excited to kind of focus my work in this area of, all right, here are the risks, here are the vulnerabilities. We're dependent on technology, most organizations, for our capabilities. How are we going to protect this space in a way that we can be efficient and effective?
Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, so let's jump into some of the high-level questions on Zero Trust. So the first one, I'll ask Ken. What is Zero Trust and how does it apply to cybersecurity?
Well, Zero Trust is obviously making sure that trust no one and always verify, right? And that's, again, really important in the National Guard based on, our homeland mission, because when you're dealing with organizations that are in a lot of cases non-DoD organizations, in some cases non-government organizations, it is key. The Guard in his past didn't really worry about this. You get a mission to support the homeland, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's supporting a national security event. Hey, we didn't worry about who we connected to, how we, where was the data, secured, or how it was secured. But we've changed that philosophy because, quite frankly, protecting the data and making sure that the adversary doesn't use those type of events to get inside of our network is key. I'll say this a lot, that we're probably the highest risk of because of how we do business and who we connect to in our homeland mission. So it's really key in the philosophy of making sure that we secure our mission space and our portion of the network. We're made up of two services, obviously, the Air Force and the Army, and two separate networks. And so with data and how we pass information, Zero Trust is absolutely required today.
Absolutely. Great points. And Hannah, did you want to add another perspective to that?
Yeah, so Zero Trust, kind of in a very consolidated nutshell, is it's an approach, it's a strategy. It's not something you can go and download onto all your organization's computers. You can't flip a switch and instantly have this kind of defense built out. Zero Trust kind of took our old school perimeter security, which is like, we have valuable information. We're going to build a fort around this thing and put all our resources in keeping this fortress up. Zero Trust recognized that there's a huge vulnerability in that. We cannot completely defend by kind of fencing out when we have trust of users' devices inside that's just implicit. That's a vulnerability. And so Zero Trust takes that trust away through different mechanisms like least privileged access, multi-factor authentication, and continuous monitoring. So it addresses more of the root cause of breaches, if you think about it that way, being trust in users and devices that maybe we shouldn't be trusting. And so it adds kind of a different element to security. So I would encourage you to not think about it as something, just a checklist of things to do, hit the pillars, you're good, done. It's an approach, it's a strategy. It's going to continue to evolve as the threats evolve.
Yep. Absolutely. Great points. So Bruce, let me ask you, why should we focus on Zero Trust? We've tried various types of cybersecurity approaches in the past. Why is Zero Trust different, and why will we achieve better results this time?
Yeah, so 2 points on the why Zero Trust, and you've heard this theme over and over and over again, and if we're lucky and we do this right, you continue to hear this same theme. The traditional, perimeter defense approach was not working, and no one's evil. No one's been bad over the years, but when we start to look at not just the threats of the day, but the threats of tomorrow, and compare it to what we're doing, we've got intrusion after intrusion after intrusion, And as we look at our most valuable assets, I think this is clear recognition that what we were doing is not going to survive against our pacing threat or other threats like Russia. So that's point number one. On the other side, so that's where my former kind of government official hat. If I put on my industry hat, I think about zero trust is more a business decision in terms of protecting the best way and the best approaches to protect your intellectual property. And so this is not just, and we'll get into some discussions about technology. This is much, much broader than that, a more holistic approach. So if I had to say why zero trust, look, you've been here 2 days now, and this is probably your 10th zero trust related forum. I think it really has to do with recognition, not just by those who are responsible for operating and defending, but this is a nationwide kind of recognition and aha moment here, just given the fact that cybersecurity is no longer just something that attacks our kind of government networks. After the pipeline incident, your average American now sees cybersecurity as a challenge, and they're going to their elected officials now to have conversations about what are you doing about cybersecurity. And so, although I get it, zero trust does not equal cybersecurity, but when you think about the fact that the components and elements of zero trust have been integrated into all 5 cybersecurity functions, this is going to be a huge challenge. But I applaud the department and I applaud the government and to quite honest with you, those that are out in both the public and private sector for taking this on now, because this takes courage and it's going to be hard. And it's going to be one of the most difficult things that I think we have taken on in a very, very long time. But I'm encouraged by the collaboration that I'm seeing and the conversations that are occurring in both ways. So that's just one man's opinion on why zero trust.
And I loved your point about the critical infrastructure sector, and that they have to really look at zero trust closely as well. Okay, over to Hannah then. I've talked about, or we've all talked about or know about the government mandates, the executive order, the OMB memo that came out. How important are these, Hannah, for the government as well as broader, perhaps?
Yeah, so I think the government mandates clearly communicated the government is serious about increasing cybersecurity. This isn't just a dream, a would-be great scenario, clear commitment. I come from a small business sector, so as an industry partner, we don't usually like the word government mandate because that means more work for us, and it takes time and energy away from revenue-generating activities just in the short term. Focus on that. But when we do, as an industry partner's perspective, investing in zero trust within our operation is an opportunity to increase our access, increase security, increase efficiency, which I would encourage you, for those of you that are industry partners here, to look at this as an opportunity to invest in your future. Investing in zero trust architecture for your company, lots of benefits for the long term. Takes some time, takes some energy in the short run, but long term, this is a significant investment that is going to last beneficially well beyond the deadline for implementing the mandate.
And just if I could just piggyback on the whole idea of mandates, we've tried that over and over and over again, and for some reason they don't seem to work very well. I think what we're experiencing now is so a move by the government and a move by industry in partnership with the government to achieve not buy-in but ownership of this particular problem. And when I talk about the difference between buy-in and ownership, buy-in kind of means I like what you're doing, but ownership means I'm willing to help you. And so I think as we move forward, at least what I've seen, you're seeing less of a mandate, and I got it. There are things we're going to have to do, and there are things that are going to have to be locked down. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. But I don't know that it's being messaged, to your point, as a mandate, because we've seen what happens when those mandates come, especially when they're unresourced mandates.
Great points. Absolutely, but since it's a mandate, we still got to do it, right? So Okay, so let's move on to the DoD Zero Trust reference architecture and the strategy. Bruce, did you want to talk a little bit about your feedback or your take on those recent documents?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. The first thing, so what I like most about the strategy, and I've read it a couple of times, is that it's much more than just a discussion about technology. When you look at the strategic goals, and we'll talk about culture in a minute, but goal number one is actually about culture. And so that's the first thing. We've seen what happens when we chase technology. So this will be absolutely, we're in the technology business, so there will be a technological aspect to this, but I think it'll be more about the application of technology and not chasing technology. But the first point I wanted to make is when you look at the depth and scope of the document, I was really proud of the department. And those, maybe some of you here in the room who had an opportunity to input, I was very proud of the fact that it was acknowledgement that this problem that we face is much, much bigger than technology. There's people, there's culture, there's policy, and many, many other aspects that you've heard about throughout the day. I think the thing that's going to be most challenging, I think there are going to be two. I talked about policy. I think integrating policy across either 45 or 91 different capability areas is going to be a challenge because most of these capabilities already have policy. They already exist and they've already set sail, just due to some the hard work of some very smart people over the years. So that's kind of challenge number one for me. And again, there's a lot more there than just pointing out that. Although I'm very, very encouraged by the testimony that I heard from a month or so ago with respect to the budget and how much money we're investing, because this really is clearly an investment in our nation's security and the intellectual property of our industry partners. So I was encouraged by that. But back to, I think, integrating and aligning those budgets between now and 27 is going to be a strategic challenge. And again, the good news is we got the right people working on it, both in the public sector and the private sector, to include the federal government. So if I had to point out a couple of things to just think about, again, there are hundreds or thousands of potential problem sets, but the good news is we're asking all the right questions now. But I would talk about integrating the policy, and we could talk about FedRAMP. We could talk about really codifying least privilege access gaps. We could talk about RMF. There's a lot of policy out there that we've got to kind of get laser focused on. But I think the integration of that's going to be a challenge. And I think although we've got great, I'd say accelerated in higher levels of funding than we probably ever had with respect to cybersecurity, I think aligning the funding from what I call the technical debt and the legacy systems that are related to cybersecurity is going to be a challenge.
Do you want to expand a little bit more about ZTA's impact on, as you mentioned, the culture, the policy, strategy within an organization, from your perspective as a leader?
Yeah. There's so the talent and people part. There's I won't start with policy. I'll come back to that, because if you want to shut down a meeting, there's two things you can talk about to shut it down. I've done this. I've seen it happen. One's architecture, and the other is policy. So I'll come back to policy. I mentioned one of the things that I was super excited about was this was bigger than just technology. That there was a people part to this. I think there's a couple of really clear-eyed and sober discussions that we've got to have. And again, there's some great work ongoing. I'd say for the last 10 years with respect to getting after the talent gap, the race for talent, the people problem, kind of pick your way of describing the particular problem set. There's great work ongoing. But I think we're going to have to take a step back. And I think we're going to have to almost reimagine the workforce of the future. As we look to recruit and retain, I think we're going to have some really good conversations with the right people at the right levels about what really inspires and motivates these people that we're trying to recruit and retain. A couple of examples of that on the people part. So work-life balance. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I see several old friends of mine who I've served with, both military and civilian. I never heard that term, work-life balance, until I was like danger close to leaving the Army. Yet the people that we're trying to recruit, that's a game changer for them. All right? That's a showstopper. And so I think in the way we go about recruiting and retaining, that's got to be important to us. And we've got to clearly demonstrate it. And I'm not saying that cures all ills, all right? But the notion that it's a binary decision, you either pay them more money or not to come work for the government, I think is not the right approach to take. We've got great patriots out there, the young people that we're trying to kind of bring in to get after the people problem. And not many people know that, so we got patriots over here, but not many people are aware that government employees actually took the same exact oath with minus a couple of words, the 72 words of the oath of office. Government employees take the same oath almost that I did as a commissioned officer, or that Sergeant Major here did as a non-commissioned officer. And so why don't we use that arrow in our quiver to allow them to come and serve? And the other thing we got to think about on talent and people is, and this one is a little bit on the edge, but perhaps given the fact that we can't get there from here and filling all of the, I'll call them cybersecurity related jobs that are available, maybe one day there's a discussion about whether a 4-year degree is still the requirement for some of these. And I know that I'm actually going down to my alma mater to do the commissioning ceremony next week, so I hope they're not listening to this, or they won't let me back on campus. But I think understanding, to put a bow on the talent and people piece, understanding what inspires and motivates them, and then adapting the current process to account for that, yes or no, all right, and then giving some thought to this whole notion of we have arrows in our quiver inside the government. And I still say we because that was my home. That's where I was kind of born. But we have arrows in our quiver with respect to service for these patriots that we don't play enough. And I wanted to give it one last shout out on the people thing. If you haven't been to, I think it's called Jackson Reed High School in D.C., formerly Woodrow Wilson High School, you should get there quickly. Because the Army, and I know the other services have some really fascinating programs, took up a partnership about a year and change ago with Junior ROTC. All right. What floored me wasn't just that they'd taken up the partnership with Junior ROTC or that it was cybersecurity focused. When I looked at the curriculum, I know I couldn't pass that. All right. And there are, I think, either 8 or 11 of these schools throughout the country where this partnership exists. So I say that last part on the people piece of this discussion to say it's not like we're not doing work. All right. There's a lot of great efforts that are ongoing, but we can't get there from here. At some point, we're going to have to decide to change the input. And I'm not talking about lowering standards, but I'm talking about pivoting potentially away from the certifications mindset to the skills mindset, especially when you've got young kids who don't have a degree who are making $100,000 a year in some cases. The only other thing, I think I've hit the policy piece to death. You've heard about it. I do think. Before we implement new policy, perhaps the only thing else I'll say about policy, perhaps we should look to divest of some of the existing, with some scar tissue from coming up with policy and then finding out I had 10 others that kind of did the same thing. So anyway, those are just a few thoughts on the people part. As you can tell, I'm extremely passionate about people. Some people have a superpower. I'm a recovering technologist like most of the people in the room, but if I had a superpower, it would be inspiring people to be better than they ever thought they can be. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart.
Hey, I would just like to chime in on the zero trust policy. strategy that was written. I think that was a game changer for the department, and certainly a game changer for the National Guard. Because when we talk mandates, Bruce is right. I mean, we mandate everything. Everything is a mandate, right? But I like the enterprise approach, dealing with 54 states and territories in the District of Columbia, in the National Guard. We have to start with a strategy that gives a enterprise way ahead, right? Because each state, they have different requirements when it comes to the homeland, right? So those adjutant generals in the states work for governors. So us here at NGB, and my role as a CIO, I try to take an enterprise solution approach. So it's critical when we have strategy and how we get at something. And just to be honest, when the zero trust strategy came out, the first thing that our partners said, our non-DoD partners said, well, how are you gonna share data and share information when you're at a fighting wildfires or at a hurricane event? How are we going to do that now? Because I'm not part of DoD. But what that did was start the conversation on security and why it's important for our data that we use when we're deploying soldiers and airmen to do to support this nation. And going away from the old days of don't worry about it. We don't need to worry about securing this information. We can operate in the open because the adversary is there. So I think that's key, and the interoperability piece is key for us in the National Guard. I mean, if I can't communicate down at the community level, with the city of Baltimore. First responders during an event, I am ineffective in this mission space, and the homeland is a mission space, right? So the interoperability piece is key because that's how we collaborate in that mission space. And I'm going to harp a little bit on the talent management and education. It was great to hear Randy Resnick talk about the courses in Zero Trust and the continuous learning. All of us need to take those courses. I feel comfortable that our young future teammates that are going to come in, whether they're with industry or the government, they're going to walk in, and this is going to be a natural for them. I do worry about the individuals like myself that's been in government, wearing a uniform, and now as civilians, we don't need to worry about that. So hearing Randy talk about the courses is key, and from Ken McNeil's perspective, they need to be mandatory, at least in Department of Defense and federal government. So I think from that aspect, we have to, zoom in on that and really do not take shortcuts, right? Because we tend to, we have all these things come out and we say, 5 years from now, it was a good idea 5 years ago, but I think we got it accomplished. We need to stay the course as we look at policy, and we need to improve the policy and strategy. And it's just not a one-shot deal. And Randy would probably tell you that, hey, we didn't write that strategy and said it's over, you follow it. It's the start of lifetime, here's how we're going to operate in the federal government, and particularly DOD.
I like your approach of calling it a start. In fact, on that note, I was going to ask any of you to chime in on how important is messaging and communication in implementing Zero Trust, since it's a long journey. It's not like you snap your fingers and it's done, right? So
well, I just want to. I know, but I just want to comment on it because that is I call it the most difficult aspect of it for the National Guard, right? I know we have some guardsmen out there right now, but when you're dealing across like I said earlier, each state and each territory in the District of Columbia has different philosophies of what things mean, right? So there's a strategy out there. There's a process in educating. Here's what this means, right? Understand that, Department of Defense at the maybe at the Pentagon level create strategy that affects a whole stream of a mission space that really we have to consider that's not really Title 10. So I think the education piece and continue to push, but that's a long-term process. And if the message is not put out there correctly early on, it'll just be another strategy or another capability that some organizations will take it serious and some organizations won't. So you have to put things in place to say, hey, if you don't follow this, you're cut off. This is how we protect the network. If you're not following this procedures, policies, you're cut off. And I think that's key, definitely, in our mission space.
Yeah, well, one thing we found in the AFCEA Cyber Committee's digital transformation research was that buy-in was critical. Buy-in at all levels. This is not just at ZEC level. This is buy-in top to bottom, the entire organization. So as you are embarking on zero trust architecture, digital transformation initiatives, you are asking for a lot of change. And most people do not like change, right? They have their routine, they want to stay in their routine, and all they're seeing that's coming out from IT is these changes have to happen. What they're hearing is my workflow is going to be disrupted. There's a gap there. We all in this room may understand these changes are necessary. We understand the big picture. We understand how this fits into the organizational mission. That's not necessarily automatically communicated to all your team members. And so in our research, we found that organizations that take those extra steps, like Ken is talking about and Bruce mentioned, on strategic messaging, they get farther. People do not join the military because they like doing push-ups. And most people do not go work for the federal government because, except for Bruce, because they love bureaucracy.
I didn't know.
You didn't know?
I didn't get the memo.
So people do these things because they love our country and they want to protect her for generations to come. Zero trust architecture is part of supporting that mission. Do not assume your people automatically go there when you're asking them to make these updates. Take the extra steps, engage them, inform them on how this is critical work and how these steps, short run, may be disruptive. Long run, this is going to empower us to really extend our capabilities and make sure that you take that time to communicate and also recognize everyone's efforts in this. Zero trust architecture implementation, not just the IT department. It's something that everyone should be involved in and engaged in and also acknowledged for their work.
Bruce, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I love the thoughts. If I had to give a grade just based on what I've seen to the department, I'd give them an A. And I've been around for some C's and D's, okay, some of which I had input to, but don't tell anyone. All right, but I'd give them an A. I think if you go back and you look at the national security strategy, the national defense strategy, and then you listen to John Sherman and his team talk, one of the first things they say, whether it's a zero trust discussion or it's a general cybersecurity discussion, is they talk about it not as a standalone entity, but they talk about cybersecurity, in this particular case, zero trust, in the context of its connection to national security. And so you're not going to see all of the exact same words, but if I had to grade them now, here in our early steps, again, early stages, understanding this is not new, I'd give them an A just because of the connective tissue to those higher level documents. And the other piece of it is continuity of funding and consistency of funding over time. And so I think absolutely, and it's been said, that strategic messaging is going to be critically important. So there's the group that's got to go and do, okay, and then there are what I call the enablers from corporate America who have capability and capacity that clearly does not exist inside the government. And so, as I heard Mr. Resnick talk about earlier, his office that he stood up is going to be critical, but so will those PMO offices and all the other services as the front door for these conversations. And the only advice that I could give to my industry partners is, as you engage, whether you're talking about data resiliency or data management backup, or you're talking about PAM or CDM or whatever it happens to be, talk about it in the context of how your product is differentiated. Because there are going to be 1,000 coming from industry, me included, to have conversations about how we can all help. So my point to all of this is the messaging has got to be a two-way street, not just from the department out, but we got to create an environment where industry also has an opportunity to provide their input. But strategically important. Great comments.
So technically, from a technology perspective, rather, so Bruce or any one of you, if you want to just make a few comments on where you see some of the low-hanging fruit, to be within the Zero Trust journey and the multiple capabilities that, have been defined.
No, I think all of the specific technologies that have been targeted for 27, the early adopters, and so we could start. You could start running down the list. But I think if you go, and I forget what page it's on in the strategy, if I were planning, I would focus there because that seems to be where most of the department's energy is focused. To put a finer point on it, anything that has to do with two big pieces: the identity of the individual and the security of the data, is going to be, based on what I've been hearing, priorities for the department. And so I got it. Whether you're talking identity or you're talking data, there's 100 different technologies associated with each one of those. But back to my earlier point, if I had to pick two, all right, just given what it is we're trying to do, least privilege access, got it. It's not all just about humans. It's also about machine. But I would be focused on the human piece of this and all technologies associated with that, identity, credential, access management, et cetera, and I would be focused on all things related to data because I suspect those will be two of the early mountains to climb.
I would say, I would say education, like I was saying earlier with the workforce. But from a technology perspective, everything that we do, we consider it. We have an initiative in the national card called Bring Your Own Device. It's pretty big. It's a game changer in the 54 states and territories, where individuals that don't have government furnished devices, which is 93% of our organization, they can stay connected between drills, mobilizations, and call-ups on their personal devices. Obviously, recognizing and going through the strategy of Zero Trust, that's a technology, but when we consider that, taking it through the paces in the department, we really focused on the Zero Trust strategy and what all that means and securing of data. Now you have, that's cloud technology. I mean, that's using your own device, but that's cloud technology. And so it brings in, from a technology aspect, everything you do, it brings that in. That just happens to be one of our key capabilities that we have going on today to support guardsmen. But that education piece is key, because if you lose confidence and with the data being secured, obviously it has cause and effect. Okay.
Just to round off the technology sort of focus that we've had for the last few answers, Hannah, did you want to talk about, it sounds to a lot of us like Zero Trust is like nirvana for cybersecurity, or it's a panacea. So is it, or do you see certain gaps, Hannah?
Yeah, so Zero Trust can definitely improve cybersecurity. So it's a good thing. However, things can still be compromised. Threats are still evolving. to give you, I wish it was an end-all, be-all for cybersecurity. You could just like put this feather in your hat for your career, updating zero trust architecture. I don't think that's reality. An example of some of the evolving threats that we've been tracking and working on includes things like social media's role in cybersecurity and breaches, and OPSEC violations, mis and disinformation, damaging organizations. Anonymous hyperlocal social media apps, like this app called Yodel. It's Jodel. It's a German-based social media app. High usage in our U.S. military service academies and select base installations. What's going on Yodel? It makes the data leaks of recent look like little leagues, and it's damaging force, it's damaging mission, and it's not something that started last week. It's been going on for almost a decade. This is just an example of a cyber threat that is impacting public sector organizations that I'm willing to bet money most of you ain't never heard of before. So this is stuff zero trust architecture. It's not something you're going to plug and play done on this damage front. So I would encourage you as you go throughout this conference and you start thinking about, okay, we've got to protect data and networks, but we've got to protect our organizations. And to Bruce's point, there's lots of facets to that. That includes the people on recruitment and retention. This isn't just about capabilities and security, but there's another whole component to this. I would encourage you to expand your kind of definition of cyber threat being, hooded hacker, mama's basement, getting data you wanted to keep classified. There's more to this, and zero trust helps, but there's stuff that it's still missing. And, people in this room, that's critical areas that we need to develop capabilities in. Our capabilities should not stop with our comfort zones if we're going to engage in this new era of information warfare.
Great. So let's actually change our focus for a little bit and talk about the idea, I guess, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. So the question to the panel, any one of you, if you want to jump in, is how does the zero trust strategy impact these IDEA principles and vice versa? How does IDEA help or promote the achievement of zero trust goals?
Yep, I'll jump in. So she's already gone, so I can talk about her. For the Albie Johnsons and the Mike Blacks and the Susan Lawrences and many, many others, it took a lot of courage, a lot of personal and professional courage in the height of a lot of fairly interesting discussions about inclusion and diversity and a lot of disheartening activities to bring the idea of diversity, inclusion, accessibility to the forefront of a discussion when most folks are here to talk about technology and what we're going to fix. When I think about the nexus of the two, and we think about the complexity of the problem that we have to solve collectively, both the public and the private sector, that includes DoD. In this particular case, we're having a conversation about cybersecurity. Why wouldn't you want a diverse set of opinions? Why wouldn't you want a diverse set of ideas, all aimed at solving the problem? In one of our board meetings just a couple days ago, what I said to the group when we were having this conversation is, listen, this is much bigger than race. It's much bigger than gender. It's much bigger than who you love. It's much bigger than where you worship or who you worship. All right, this is about treating people, human beings, with dignity and respect, and creating an environment as the leader where all opinions matter. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, in my mind, that's our competitive advantage as a country, all right, the fact that we're able to do that. So if we do it every day as a country, why wouldn't we apply the concept of IDEA, inclusion, diversity, and creating an environment where all opinions matter against probably the toughest problem that we've taken on in quite some time? So just a couple of thoughts about how you bring these two together. And in my opinion, it's about diversity of thought, because that, to me, in my mind, is true diversity. Regardless of, kind of what you're experiencing. That's, again, one man's opinion, but it's all about diversity of thought. And you can't get diversity of thought if you don't have diverse experiences providing that input. So just an opinion.
I hate when Bruce speaks before me because he just took half of my ideas.
I looked at your notes.
But it is, I mean, he nailed it when he talked about diversity of thought, right? So I like saying this in Guard Nation, when we talk about 54 states and territories and District of Columbia, that's the whole nation, right? So so having that trusted, when you talk about technology and the secure data and how people think in their particular state or their territory, this is key. So if you don't feel your thoughts are welcome or valued, or your contribution, you're not going to feel comfortable. And when we talk about zero trust and we talk about secure of data information, and we also talk about making sure that we're transparent, all of that comes together. It really does. And quite frankly, this panel is a perfect example of it. And General Lawrence left a few minutes ago, but Bruce, he nailed it. Having opportunities. I'm an opportunity type guy. If you don't give people opportunity, they'll never get a chance to excel, and they'll never get a chance to be in the shoes that maybe where their goals are, and that's key. And so I talk opportunity all the time, because we can't exist as in this great nation if we don't have an open mind about opportunity. And so this is a longer conversation that we have on this panel, but just I would say, I would like everyone out there to take away that just be open minded about giving people opportunity, no matter their thoughts. They may be different from you. They may look different from you. They may be from a different place than you are. But if you're open minded from that aspect, I think it continues to have this country to be the great nation that it is today.
And Hannah, did you want to provide a small business perspective to that?
Yeah, so we talk about zero trust in the terms of kind of security. How is this going to amp up our security? But if we implement zero trust, we also amp up our accessibility. We're able to provide more secure, to be able to work from home or have a hybrid workforce, which in doing that, you're able to engage talent that historically haven't been able to access traditional in-person work. We saw this in the pandemic. For our small business, we were already engaging these kind of talent pools because that's been our life experience. As a disabled veteran-owned firm, we actively recruit disabled veterans, many of whom require workplace accommodations such as working from home, not having work travel, and hybrid work. Other groups, veteran caregivers, which the Elizabeth Dole Foundation estimates over 5 million veteran caregivers in the United States caring for wounded warriors. And then also military spouses. That's a demographic in the U.S. that currently faces 22 to 38% unemployment, which is an atrocity. How can being married to someone in the military mean you give up your career? So that stuff our small business was already tracking on as a wealth of cyber talent. My first cyber credential came through a military spouse, a cybersecurity nonprofit that provided this for free, MilSpouse Coders. Still involved with them. Today, they're the only talent group or cyber workforce group
that continues to have trouble finding jobs because many of the big companies will not offer that hybrid or remote access as a PCS around, well, the globe. So I would encourage you, we're thinking zero trust, we're thinking IT department, security, but also think about how this is going to advance your organization's mission. It includes talent, recruitment, and retention. This increases your diverse pool of highly qualified cyber talent that most organizations are saying they don't know where they are, and we're so short. Well, I'm telling you, I mean, there are these pools of unemployed, highly qualified cyber talent. All they require is hybrid or remote work. That's really not that much to ask. You implement digital transformation, you implement zero trust effectively, your organization can access a broader talent pool.
Great points, great points. At this, let's see, we are almost at an hour. I'd like to see if we have time for a few audience questions. If you'd like to engage in the discussion. Don't everybody?
I think we're standing between them and the bar, I think.
I see.
I can ask a question. How are you guys doing? So my name is Theo Gates. I'm a business integra. I've been working in zero trust for a very, very long time. It's evolved, and this is kind of feeding off one of your last technical questions, actually. So this has evolved from 3 pillars originally when we came out with zero trust back in 2010. It got extended with zero trust extended to 5 pillars. It then got extended with the NIST 800-207 paper with the platforms. Then the DoD stuff came out with the 91 components mapped across various pillars. So my question to the group is, as we continue to evolve, where do you see the current zero trust architectures? Where can we improve upon them, or where do we feel like they need to evolve further?
You want to jump in? Where I see them going, and Mr. Resnick talked about it a little bit, I think it's the integration of various architectures that is going to be the win. Right. I don't know that there's any one silver bullet. I think it's the integration of other technologies that we don't think about today when we think about our identity. Anybody signed onto one of their devices without a biometric interface lately? But yet we don't have a lot of conversations about where biometrics are going. So if I had to talk about architecture, again, I know that shuts down meetings, and it's interesting that you said it right. You brought it up right here at the end. I say the challenge is not developing an architecture. Remember, this would be easier, not easy, if we just got an opportunity to start from scratch. Right. Unfortunately, we don't get that. We don't get that option. Everything in the department is almost a build, and so I would say the hill to climb here, a pain point, will be integrating the various architectures that are associated with ZTA.
Yeah, it's I like to say it's building an airplane while in flight, right? The old cliche. There is no one-stop shop. This is how we're going to do it, and this is the way ahead. It's having that flexibility to bring together existing architectures and looking out in the future, right? Because today we're at the base, of the mountain, but as we continue to go forward. When you talk technology is revolving. Architectures are revolving. So it's that flexibility that we need to have.
Okay. Do we have any more time for questions?
No, great.
I guess not. Okay, so.
All right. Obviously, a very interesting topic and a lot to discuss, and so we'll take that under advisement for future opportunities. What I want to do is just thank you. Dr. Gupta for leading this. I was in on the discussion ahead of time to put this together, and I appreciate the seriousness that you took in this, and just the professionalism to put together an amazing panel of panelists. So how about a round of applause for our folks here? Okay, a couple things. Just as a token of our appreciation, we're going to donate on behalf of each panelist to Girls Who Code. It's a nonprofit organization that aims to support and increase the number of women in computer science. There's a reminder that you get the continuing education credits for this upon exit. I'm not letting you leave yet. I'll tell you when you can get up and what I want you to do. So just bear with me for just a second here. we mentioned that we have the reception upstairs at 5 p.m. We've got an amazing panel getting started next door. As I know some of you are interested in that, the Principal Cyber Advisor. So if you can, I'd like you to push you over to that to enjoy that. But before I let you go, that's a song. Before I let you go, okay. Hannah, I did join the Air Force to do push-ups.
Wow.
I want to call Susan Emmert up here. I know she doesn't even know about this. She's got a bag on her shoulder, but I'm going to have her come up here. She is the catalyst behind Women in AFCEA and now IDEA. This is her last TechNet Cyber. She is retiring from AFCEA, and I just want to recognize her real quick for all that she's done, the difference that she's made, the passion that she has for this program. So I'm going to give her an opportunity to just say goodbye and a couple of words, and then I'm going to ask you to go next door. Okay? Susan.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. For those of you who know me, you know I'm not normally on the podium. I do all the work in the back that's invisible, and I'm normally fairly happy with that. But I'm very appreciative I get a chance to say thank you to everyone, all the amazing women I've worked with over the years, and now the AFCEA IDEA people. Mike Black, it's been fantastic working with you. Just thoroughly enjoyed our fairly short time together on this. I am retiring next week. But AFCEA IDEA is just, it's so important. We just want to create that sense of belonging for anyone at any AFCEA event or anything to do with AFCEA at all. So that's our main goal. And thank you for being here today and listening to this great panel. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this too. It's much appreciated. So it is goodbye. And for those of you that know me well, I'm sure we'll meet again. But I'm very appreciative of AFCEA. It's a wonderful place to work. It's a wonderful organisation to engage with, as I'm sure you all know by now. And we look forward to just furthering the cause of AFCEA IDEA and continuing the great work that women in AFCEA are doing as well. So thank you, everybody. I will miss everybody very, very much. Thank you.
And I just wanted to thank our three panelists. It's been a lot of fun working with Bruce, Ken, and Hannah. Lovely to meet you and to interact with you on these topics, and to the audience for staying with us. We went a little bit above time, but thank you.
Nice.
Very much.